Hello, welcome to this seminar on, excuse me, let's go all the way back to the first slide, the hidden power of layouts in Backdrop CMS. So the administrator here, quick process question. I just heard that the attendees were in listen only mode. Did we say we were going to turn on their audio?
Yes, audio should be on now. I unmuted everyone.
So I understand that there aren't probably too many people in the room, but I think somebody's out there. Does anybody want to say hi? Can I hear?
Hi, I'm Jeff Porton. You'll recognize my name from the Getter and the new Z chat room. I used Backdrop for a project, got frustrated by it, tried Drupal 7, got frustrated by that, now I'm back on Backdrop. So looking forward to hearing about how to use layouts, because it's been not as, it's great for what it does, but I've been frustrated by some of the hidden features. So yes, hoping I'll come away knowing that stuff.
Okay. Is anybody else out there?
Hey, Tim, it's Jen. I'm just here to watch your fancy session.
Okay. Hopefully I'll teach you something or you can help out. And, anybody else?
And Luke's here too.
Who's there?
Luke, can you hear me?
Luke's there. Okay. How about Gregory? Gregory make it? All the Backdrop people. Okay, I'm flipping around here between screens. Let me get back to my presentation. So we're going to talk about the hidden powers of layouts. For those, I probably should minimize that. For those who don't know me, which I think most people do, Jeff doesn't know me very well. I am St. Paul Tim around the internet. My company is Triplo. I'm sort of doing this presentation under the Simplo brand, which I'll talk about in a second. I am a recent member of the Backdrop CMS Project Management Committee, and my hobbies are juggling fire, which I don't do very often. I'm a biker and enjoy my craft beer, amongst other things. Okay, so I want to start out, though, we're in a CMS Philly presentation and sort of about general CMSs. It sounds like most of the people in the room right now are familiar with Backdrop, but some people watching this later might not be. Backdrop is an open source CMS that is a fork of Drupal. I have put some resources here if you want to follow up and learn more about what Backdrop CMS is. I really appreciate the fact that Backdrop CMS has a philosophy page. So if you go to backdropcms.org, you can look up the philosophy and hear like who Backdrop is intended for and targeted at. It's really helpful. Actually, part of what I wanted to do, is actually show some of these pages quick. So this is backdropcms.org. Where you can get all the information. I won't go to the philosophy page right now, but I do want to show, if you're new to Backdrop CMS and are interested in getting involved in the community, this resources link could be the most important one on the Backdrop CMS site. I use it all the time to navigate my way around the community, because it has links to all of the various resources and places that you might want to go in the Backdrop community, the live chat, and I do have a link on my slide to Zulip, which is our sort of the app for Backdrop, and that's where you can go and get sort of live help. People are very welcome and friendly there. We also have the Backdrop forum, where you can ask questions. Again, we really appreciate people coming and asking questions. I view asking questions in the forum as a form of community contribution, and highly recommend that if you want to give back to the Backdrop community and you don't know how else to do it, just come and ask us your questions in the forum so we can document the answers and share them with other people in the future. Going down the repositories and issue queues is an important link to sort of find your way around the many different GitHub repositories we use. And I guess the last thing I'll highlight on this page is our community meetings, that if you're interested in Backdrop, we have weekly meetings Every week we have a core developer meeting, which anyone is welcome to come in, participate in, and get information and share concerns. Every other week we do, alternating weeks, we do design and outreach meetings. And if you're interested in helping to promote Backdrop, that's a great place to do it. Okay, is there anything else that's I didn't just mention on my slides? I think that covers most of it. I do have a direct link to the Backdrop, the GitHub issue queue here, which is just another interesting way to see what's going on in the community and to see how active it is. I have a screencast I did on layouts for Backdrop that you can find at the Team Triplo YouTube account, as well as about I don't know, 8 to 10 other screencasts I've done about Backdrop. So feel free to look through those, and I would love to get feedback on those. The last thing I just want to say is, again, the Simplo logo that I'm using for these slides is for a website that I have been working on lately, which basically is a place where I'm offering some, doing an online class right now. Let's resave that and get rid of this message. I'm doing a free class, and basically it's a small group of folks I've been meeting with weekly, and we've been just working through how to build a website with Backdrop CMS, and it's fairly informal. It's free, anybody can join. With Simplo, I also have been experimenting with, and this is kind of a, I don't know, I would call it an alpha tool, but I'd love for people to help me try it out, is if you want to play around with Backdrop and spin up kind of a slightly pre-configured version of Backdrop that I've been working on, you can do it for free, and in a couple of minutes you can have a working Backdrop site hosted on our server, which you can later move if you want to. For the time being, it's free, and will help provide you support as you get started on your Backdrop journey. So,
Hey, Tim, do you, those classes, do you have an archive somewhere of the one since March?
That was the intention. We have, what I have been doing more of is the videos, the screencasts I shared, is consider them sort of the tutorial. A lot of the classes have been informal Q&A, and we have been not recording those. But my intention was to get a more structured class going and to have it available, so via email or via video. So the short answer is no. The long answer is I would like to have something better available, and working on it. But a lot of what we're covering is covered in my screencasts. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. So that's Simplo, and it'd be a great place to go and play. I'm not going to go back. On backdropcms.org, on the front page is a demo button where you can spin up a 24-hour sandbox site for Backdrop CMS. And I recommend that as a really quick place to just sort of evaluate and try out Backdrop. But if you want something that's going to hang around longer, that's where Simplo would come in, is that you can currently spin up a site there, and at least for the time being, and I'll communicate with anybody before I delete anything, for the time being, that'll be there for a while. And I just recommend that if you do spin up a site there, which you can do on your own, to be in touch with me so that we can provide support and coordinate and provide you whatever help you need. So what I wanted to talk about today was the layout system in Backdrop. For me, and I know everybody on this call has their roots in the Drupal community, and I talk to a lot of people in the Drupal community, so I'm going to make references to Drupal 7 a lot, or a fair amount in this presentation in comparisons. And in moving into Backdrop, the layout system was one of the biggest changes from Drupal. If you're moving from Backdrop to Drupal, one of the hardest things for me to sort of wrap my head around, not because it's that complex or anything, but because it's just different from the way we do things in Drupal. And it certainly has a lot of advantages. One of the disadvantages is just that mind shift that you have to make. And I know in my early days of working with Backdrop, I kept wanting to do things the Drupal way. And in some ways, Backdrop is very similar to Drupal 7. and you won't even notice the difference. In other ways, like the layouts, it's quite different. Although it does relate to it has similarities to some of the contrib modules that we used in Drupal 7 to manage layouts. Anyways, on a really basic level, your website design is made up of the layout and then the various styles. And there's probably lots of different ways to make this kind of a distinction. But in Backdrop in particular, this is important. And let me flip to the next slide. In Drupal 7 and I think Drupal 8, we had themes. I forget exactly the term in the WordPress world, if it's themes or if they use skins, or I know I've entered or been involved or seen other tools that sort of use skins to describe the changes in the color, if you're just sort of changing the color and the font styles. In Drupal, we had themes, and themes included all the CSS, but it also included template files that would structure where position elements on your page. And so all of that was done together in the theme. A lot of themes came with sort of very defined layouts, and then you could customize them by getting into these template files and change them. There were contributed modules like display suites or panels that gave you a user interface option to sort of customize the layout of your page and move elements around the page in a very custom way. But these were part of Drupal core and modules you had to add afterwards. I know that Drupal 8, and I'm just again talking about Drupal because it's what I'm familiar with, has eventually added some layout options into core, although they have some similarities to what we're doing in Backdrop, but I think they're also different in a lot of ways. And I don't think my understanding of the Drupal 8 layout system is that it's much more focused sort of on laying out your body fields or the main portion of just like the content area of your page rather than the entire page. Well, we'll see in Backdrop, we have a little bit more control over that. In Backdrop, we've broken apart what was the theme in Drupal, and we have themes, and then we have layouts, and layouts are completely separate from your themes. Your themes in Backdrop are more like the skins that I mentioned earlier, although that's not a perfect description. But the biggest thing in your theme is really the CSS that's defining your fonts, your colors, your type sizes. But the positioning of elements on the page is all done through the layout, which is again treated completely different in Backdrop. There is some overlap. You have the ability to add a custom layout within a theme, but for the most part, I think at least that's not the way I've worked. In my work in Backdrop, I'm pretty much treating the themes and dealing with layout issues completely separately. Okay, so a key distinction that we struggle with a bit to communicate clearly is the difference between a layout and a template, or as we call them, layout templates. When you're laying out your page, a layout template is more generic. It defines the regions in which you can place content on your website, right? So just your header, your top, this is a really simple kind of template for a layout. Again, in the Drupal world, you would have something like this, and you could drag blocks into each one of these regions. The difference between a layout and a template, quickly, Backdrop comes with different layout templates in core. The difference between layouts and templates is layouts are more specific. Layouts are specific configurations of content using a specific layout template. In Backdrop CMS, we manage layouts with blocks, and mostly, almost entirely by moving blocks around the page. I'm going to just pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions up until now? Okay.
Question for later. One question I have is, in the footer layout,
Yep.
I haven't been able to figure out how to do 3 columns in that within the existing layout section, a layout template. I haven't figured out how to say
Okay.
make the footer 3 blocks as opposed to having the 3 blocks higher
Well,
on some of the templates that have 3 columns.
you're right. I'm going to get there in a minute. So that's a great question, and we'll talk about that in a second. So what I have here right now on the screen is an example of the same template being used in 2 different ways to just clarify this difference between what a layout is. A layout is sort of a specific context or use case, right? And so in this case, we've got the exact same sort of template. We have the same regions on each of these pages, but and in both of them, say the very top header is the same, but in the left context, which is say the front page of the site, maybe we use the top region below the header as the special announcements, and maybe we just put our breadcrumbs on blog post pages in there. On the front page, you might use sort of the content region as a list of teasers for your recent blog posts, and maybe in the right sidebar, upcoming events. Whereas on the blog post, you'd put your date and body field in that content region, and in the sidebar, you'd have links to related content. And in this particular example, the footer we're treating the same in both. So basically what I'm trying to distinguish is that the layout of the regions is sort of the template, combining that template with some specific context, like how we're using them for blog posts. That's a specific layout. And I am getting Slack messages from a colleague of mine. Let's see if I can tell you what, we're just going to disable Slack or turn it off. Get back to the presentation. So that terminology between a template and a layout is a bit confusing. So I'm trying to spend a little bit of time talking about that to help you understand that. Backdrop comes, I told you before, it came with 10 different templates that you can use right out of the box. It comes with 4 actual layouts, and this is where you'll start to, hopefully some of what I'm saying will start to make some more sense. So they're pretty simple. I mean, I think in the Drupal world, it's fairly safe to say that in most cases when you install a theme, you really have one layout, and well, maybe it's not fair to compare them in exactly this way, but you certainly in Drupal core out of the box, you don't have this sort of distinction. So we have a home, like a Backdrop comes with a homepage layout, and I'm going to go to a live site in a minute, and we can look around, and this will maybe become a little bit more real and alive. But we have a homepage layout that defines what the homepage layout looks like. And then we have a default layout, which is pretty much everything else. And I guess what I was getting out in Backdrop or Drupal is you sort of start with a default layout, and there are ways of creating other layouts, but you don't have. Come back to that later. We have 2 other what are essentially administrative layouts in Backdrop. One is for the dashboard, which we'll look at in a minute, and another is just sort of a default administrative layout for everything else. So basically, we have 2 default layouts for sort of a front end and an administrative default layout, and then we have 2 special cases. On the administration port, we have the dashboard, and on the home page, we have that. The way that Backdrop determines which layout to use as a user's visiting a page is it works from the top to the bottom on this layout page. And so it's going to look first at the very top layout, the admin dashboard, and say, is that the layout that I should be using for this page? Well, unless you're on the admin dashboard, the answer is no. So then it's going to ask, is this the home page? If it is, boom, it's going to use that layout, it's done. If it's not the home page, it's going to keep working its way down its list, which this is a short list, so it gets to the default right away. And it says, well, is this anything else? And it is. So the default layout is what's going to apply to anything that is not the dashboard or the home page, and is not. It would only get to the administrative layout if it wasn't a user page.
Hey, Tim, on that last
Yep.
page, is there a widget to reorganize the that top-down flow?
No.
Let's say I wanted to create a new one that was above homepage and another one that was below homepage. How would I do that?
Yeah, there's a reorder option.
Okay, thank you.
Jen, remind me well, because if Backdrop to some extent places them, like if I create them, it creates them where they, how do we, let's wait till we get into the actual page.
Yeah, it's in the screenshot, it's in the drop button next to manage blocks.
That's right.
So you can't see it here, but it's a hidden option in there. So when you do have more than one layout that would catch in the same circumstances, it lets you control the order of them. So in this case, there aren't any, which is why you don't, it's not very obvious, but
okay. I didn't mean to derail the presentation. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
no.
sorry.
That's all fine. I prefer to address the issues that you're interested in as we go. There's a number of things about the layout system, and the reason I called this the hidden power of layouts is that there's a number of features that sort of don't show up until you get closest, or until you're in a context where you need them. And that means that some of the features, and I'm thinking particularly of field blocks, which we'll talk about in a minute, you don't know that field blocks are there unless you sort of set up the right context to use them. And I think, Jeff, I believe that if you haven't figured them out yet, that they might have addressed some concerns you've had in the past. But anyways, so you have to really play around with layouts to get the whole power. Okay, I want to get to the live site pretty quickly. Here we go. This is basically the main way you're going to manage content within a layout is by managing blocks. And if I go back, oops, here we go. If we go to this page, if you add a layout, it's basically going to take you, well, this is administering a layout that already exists. So this is the dashboard layout. And the settings for each layout include which template you want to use. And you can add contrib layout templates to your site. And we also have, and we'll talk about it in a minute, the ability to create flexible, sort of custom flexible layout templates that you can use. And that is going to partially answer the question that was asked earlier about like getting 3 regions in the footer. With each layout, you're going to set a path where you want that layout to apply. So right, for the dashboard, there's a specific admin/dashboard. That's where this layout applies. The context here below that is basically referring to that path, and this is sort of defining under what context we're using that layout. This is not something, that you set directly, or you set that through the path. And then you have visibility conditions. And I think the next slide is visibility conditions. For each layout, you can set visibility conditions in terms of when you want this layout to be used. And this is very powerful in that you can, use a layout just on the front page. You can use layouts, have different layouts for different site languages. You can set a layout for any very specific path within your site, like the dashboard. We had admin/dashboard. That has its own layout, and you can really do that for virtually any path in your site. You can use different layouts for different user permissions. So you can have one layout for authenticated users and a particular path, and another for unauthenticated users. You can create a layout for a very specific node ID. And for those who are not in the Drupal world, a node is just a specific piece of content. So that would be like a specific blog post. Like my layouts blog post, I could actually have define one layout just for that particular blog post. I can also do a node type, and then again, that would be like blog posts. So I can have a layout for blog posts. I can have another layout for events, and a different layout for anything else. We have the ability to assign layouts to a specific UID, so you can, which would be a user identification. So you can give layouts to a specific user. And here I have to clarify, I talked before about having different layouts for authenticated and unauthenticated users. That would actually be providing layouts by role. If we go back up to user permission, this is even more fine-grained. It's like if the user has permission to access a certain type of content. And both Backdrop and Drupal come with very fine-grained and detailed permission system. So you can give different roles, unauthenticated, a logged-in user, a member, an editor. You can give them very detailed roles and what they can and can't do on the site, and then you can alter their layout based on what role they have. Excuse me. So, excuse me for jumping around on my navigation here. So that's where we were. I feel like that's a repeat slide that I had before. So basically, the main way we're going to manage layouts is by moving blocks around within any given layout. Let's go, well, okay, I've got what I'm calling a couple of hidden tips here. One is a fairly new we'll go over these quickly and then let's go to the live site. We have the ability with just about, I think 2 versions ago, or was it 3, we added flexible layout templates to Backdrop Core. And this gives you the ability, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back and see. Now, I'll have to show you how you get here later in the screencast. But it gives you the ability to create a custom template. And you can add rows. We can see down here. It comes with a default of 3 rows, and you can delete these existing rows or add to them and edit the configuration for each one. And when you go to add a row, you can pick how many regions you want, 1 through 4, and then you can pick which sort of breakdown, the widths you want each region to be in. And again, looking at this live will be a little bit more powerful, but you can add as many rows as you need, and so you can create whatever configurations, whatever configuration you need to have a custom, a powerful custom layout here, and then use that, or these would be, this is where the terminology is important. This is actually creating a layout template. And then you can, once you've created that custom layout template, you can use that on whichever layouts that you want. There are some, and this is I think kind of a hidden thing that isn't obvious to people at first with the layouts, is there are things like the page title, which if you look in the background here, we're looking at the default layout. And the page title is just sort of inserted between the header and the top regions by default. However, if you go to place a block on the page, we have 2 different blocks, one of which is page title and one is page title combo, which actually gives you a page title, the tabs, and the local action links. And if you enable either of these blocks on your page, then this default page title goes away, and it's no longer sort of hard-coded in that position. So you can move your page title into any region, including the footer if you wanted to, just by adding that block. And it's not obvious up front that this default one's going to go away, but it does. If we look at the page title combo, again, I said that comes with the page title and tabs, like the tabs, that would be like the edit tab, the revisions tab. For admins, you can put the tabs is normally sort of has a default position, which I forget off the top of my head. I believe it's actually under the page title. And you can, if you add this page title combo, or there's another block that's just tabs, and if you add those blocks again, then the default no longer applies. There may be 1 or 2 other cases like that of things that are sort of hard-coded, but if you can move them from their default position. I know in Drupal 7 that is almost impossible without really hacking a Drupal theme to just create kind of like a blank page. If you just wanted to have a page with a custom block on it, like getting rid of the page title, I believe was really hard. There was a couple of other things like that, and Backdrop gives you a lot of flexibility. You can literally have just one block on a page or on a page layout. So I referenced this a little bit earlier, which is field blocks. And so normally, by default, the default layout has a main page content, and the main page content is going to display your content, whether that be an event, a blog post, an article, maybe a speaker piece of content, and it's in the Drupal and Backdrop world. Each piece of content can be broken down into many fields, and those fields are just all sort of part of that node, that content, which will display in this block. And it will pretty much display, we have controls elsewhere in terms of ordering which order those fields appear in, but by default, they just sort of appear sequentially up and down in the content region. However, there's this very powerful feature, which again, I think most people are unaware of, which are these field level blocks. And I'll show you how you don't see these field level blocks until you get the layout in the right context. And once you do, then suddenly you have all these field level blocks, which lets you take individual fields, like we have one here for class, we have one for image, a link, a tags, there's a field, a body block, and we can actually drag those into different regions. So we could, and we can reorder them all here right in the layout. So you can actually manipulate your content and move it around the page using these field level blocks if you know that option is there. Let's come back to that. My last two, I wanted to just throw in a couple of config modules that I find to be really helpful, I think, for a beginner in terms of laying out their page in a way, although this isn't part of the Backdrop layout system directly, a module, but because layouts is about placing blocks around the page, one of my frustrations was the ability, without actually writing CSS, to be able to do things like put a background image in or put a border around your block. Or actually, what I was more concerned is like, yeah, let's just go ahead and do this. On the Simplos site, I really wanted to be able to create a block through the UI that did something like this, that just it stretched all the way across the page and it had a different color background. And normally a Drupal developer would do this could theme each block any way they want, but that was hard you couldn't necessarily change the background color of a block through the user interface or the layout system. And I worked with another developer, Joseph, who I think is around today. I don't know if there's any chance he's listening in, but if he is, he had created this module for his own use called configurable block styles. And I was asking about that functionality, and he agreed to release this module into Contrib, and since I've become a co-maintainer and helped a bit with add some features to it, but it gives you the ability to customize your blocks, I guess, within the layout. And another, I'm going to raise this block, it's a fancy block module, because I've had recently in my class some people asking specifically for this kind of functionality. And there are ways, and basically this functionality is the ability to create sort of these side-by-side blocks. And actually, Jeff, this partly answers your question earlier, possibly, although this is, there's a way we can do that directly with the layout system without this module that's more flexible. But if your use case is something like this, like if you just wanted some icons or some photos or some links, and you wanted them to show up next to each other like this, the fancy block module is a really cool module that lets you do that. And you could do that in the footer if you needed to have 4 different images with links in the footer.
I got to say, all the stuff you're demoing just looks fantastic. You answered 20 of my questions already.
Okay. I'm doing a quick time check here. We've got about 15 minutes. So let's go to a live site. And I have, where is it? Which one? This is the one. This is my, just a raw, almost a raw backdrop site that I've installed locally with Lando. And I'll highly recommend Lando as my local development tool of choice. That helps me spin up sites locally. So I spun this up last night. And one thing that this is different from a raw backdrop site is that I have enabled a module that just puts some sample content into the site. I may release this module as a contrib project. All the data is from Wikipedia. And so it gives us something to play with in a layout system. So let's go. First of all, the layouts, you can find your layouts under structure, and we go to the layouts screen. Actually, I think a little bit slow here. Okay, so we're going to see that there's one extra layout here, and that's something I configured last night, and it helps answer one of the questions I raised earlier about sort of having a custom context. So if you, let's go ahead and under each layout, we have the ability to manage the blocks, configure the layout. We can clone it, export it, disable it, or revert it to its default. The main one we're interested in here is configuring. And although this is the wrong one, so Jen, I really should do so would there be an option to reorder them here? Is that where it is, if it's possible?
Yes, so you only have one layout right now at node/%, so there's no link.
Right.
But if you had multiples, there would be another reorder link in that menu.
Sure. So I guess the point that you're raising is that, let's talk about this. I have a specific layout for blog posts. And the way I did that was I added a new layout. And I'm going to go ahead and open this one up to the configuration page. And I gave it a custom path with a wildcard, which basically said, take this, or use this layout on any page that has this path. And this is kind of again, it's a wildcard to indicate that it's a page directly to a node, which is a node is a piece of content defined by a content type. Now the thing is, blog posts are nodes, but so are events. Maybe this website doesn't have events, but they might be. So this is not really that specific. Right now, if I just left it this way, this would apply to all nodes of any type of content, but I wanted this for just blog posts. So what I hadn't finished doing yet, what I can do is go down to visibility conditions and say, okay, in theory, we could be using this layout on any node, but we only want to use it on blog posts. So I can go to the visibility conditions and I can go to node type. And when I do node type, it's going to give me the 3 different types of nodes that are currently available on my site. And one of them is posts, and that's blog posts, and I can hit post, add that condition. And now this layout will apply to, first it's going to look to the path and it's going to say, oh, for any node, we could use this, but there's a visibility condition that only says use it on posts. So this layout will only get used on posts now. And if it's an event content type, actually, if we go back and we look at, if we go to the layouts, Backdrop is going to be, as it's deciding which layout to use, it's going to go through, and it's not the dashboard, it's not the home page. Oh, it is a node, but then it's going to check the visibility condition, and it's going to say, well, is it a post or is it not? If it's not a post, it'll move down and use the default layout. If it is a post, it'll use this one. And that ability to reorder might be important because we might have 3 different node layouts with different visibility conditions. And it's possible that a particular node would be qualify for two different visibility conditions, yeah. And in that case, it's going to use the first one. So for example, if we wanted a different view for logged in users of the blog post than unauthenticated users, then we could create two of these, both with the blog post visibility condition, but one that's only visible to authenticated users or logged in users, and we could put that one first in front of the other one. That way, as Backdrop's evaluating that, it would get to this one, and all of the conditions would meet, so it would use that one. And if all of the conditions didn't meet, it would go on to the next. So is that clear?
I'm good.
Good. If anybody has questions about that, let me know. The point I was making about field blocks is that this is where you don't even have the option. If I go to the home page and I hit manage blocks, and I just go, so I'm on the home page layout, and within any of these regions, I can click add a block, and I'm going to get a whole list of blocks that are available by default, including a custom block, which just lets me, it's a blank block that I can put anything I want into it. But it also has things like existing content. So I could take a specific blog post and I think if I click on the existing content block, I have the ability to enter an ID for a very specific piece of content. And now that becomes a block that I can move around I can put on the site. I could put that specific piece of content on the front page, on the home page, or have it show up on every other blog page if I wanted to. But what I wanted to get here was if I do add blocks here on the home page and I scroll through these blocks, I'm not going to see any field blocks. So I'm not even aware that these field blocks exist. But because once you set the right context, which is that node slash ampersand, I'm waiting for my slow site to go back. Once I set the context for the blog page, now if I go into this and I go down here to add blocks, boom, I have all of these field blocks available to me, a block for each field. And I believe that these also work. Actually, I didn't test this, but I believe that as soon as well, no, that's not true. Actually, I'm pretty sure I have tested this, that you would need to get rid of once you start using the field blocks, your content is going to get duplicated unless you get rid of the main page content, because the main page content is going to show you all of the fields together in their default order by default. And if you start adding field blocks, then that information would get doubled up. So what I would do is I would simply remove this main page content block, and now I would place my fields individually. So actually, let's do this quick. I would place the body field in the content region. I'm not going to do too much, but then I'm going to, in the sidebar, I'm going to add the image, the field image, add block, save, and then we'll go look at one of our, okay. I need to do one more thing. I wanted to show this with the animal posts, but that's a different type of, it's a different type of node. So I need to change the visibility condition to not show blog posts, but to show. So if we go to the blog, this and manage this layout, I actually want this to be for animals, not for blog posts, and I'm going to edit the visibility condition. Instead of showing posts, I'm going to show animals. Although you can see I could set this for multiple different types of content. I'm going to set that for animals. I'm going to go back and save this. Go to the home page. Well, this is, it does have the picture in the right, but that's not for the reasons we're talking about. This is a teaser, which is set up that way on the front page. But if I actually go to the node page for the lion, we have a different problem here. But now I have the body field in this column, I have the image field, and none of the other fields are visible at all because I didn't place them. For example, there was a link field, and that's not showing it up at all because I want. But anyway, so I can custom lay out my, all of my animal pages just using the layout system once I've set that context. I'm going to pause here and ask Jeff, if there's any, since you had the most questions.
I mean, this looks great. The question I have is, am I right in thinking that, let's say I want to do a concatenated text box from several different fields. Is that done in the TPL file, or is that done somewhere in here?
So if you wanted to sort of concatenate, so to put together, if you had multiple fields and you wanted to add them together to make up like, and display them as if they were a single field. I think.
Or just in a single block, or a single visual block on the page. It can be multiple blocks.
If you just want them to be in a region, then yeah, I could put more. Oh, well, let's look at that quickly, because I think we only had one block per region, and that's not a limitation. So apologize for the slowness here. And I think, if I understand correctly, that we're just going to get cut off in 4 minutes. So so if I go to the animals page,
if you have more you want to present, we can just take this to the Zulip discussion later.
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about this some more. And I also recommend, I do have a screencast on layouts where I talk about some of this. Anyways, so where I put the field image over here, I can go add block, and I can add other, oops, am I in the right? Yeah, I am. Oh, there it is. I went past it. I can add another field into that region, right? So now I've got the image and the link, and I can reorder, they're drag and drop. I can move these blocks around just by dragging them. And I could even, I think there's one more. I think there's a tag. Oops. Add block. I believe there's a tags. There we go. Field animal tags. There's a lot of settings we could do for each block. I'm not looking at those right now. Definitely something you should explore. But we save this. We go back. On the home page, where we're looking at teasers, nothing has changed. But if we click through to the lion page, again, I'm not sure why. Yeah, there's like I would have had the option not to show that the title of the block, but I did. It could be this. There's no tags showing. I don't know why the image isn't showing. I'll look at that later. And the tags aren't showing. It could be that this block, this piece of content didn't have any tags. You can check that quick. So did I answer your? Because we got 2 minutes left. Yep, it had no tags.
I'm very good over here. Thank you.
Okay. So your question about like having 4 blocks next to each other in the footer, right? Mm-hmm. So there's two ways of doing that. One of which is to create a couple of ways. One of which is to create find an existing template that has multiple regions in the footer, or at the bottom, side-by-side regions. Another way is to create a flexible layout template where you put multiple blocks. Or if, you could use something like the fancy block module if that meets your use case, but that's much more restricted. And there my tags did show up. Is this what you had in mind by concatenating fields?
More along the lines of, let's say it's city, state, space, zip code. That sounds like more like a template file thing?
Yes, I think, Jen, feel free to jump in. I think you'd have to do that through like a pre-process function, wouldn't you? Or a view. You could use views to do that as well. And we'll talk about that later. Okay, yeah, if you didn't want to touch code, you could accomplish that task through creating a views block. Because again, for those of you who know what views are, very powerful tool in Backdrop, and you can create blocks and move them around the page. So I think we should wrap up because we're going to get shut down right now.
I'm very sorry if I took up all the question time. I hope nobody else here had any.
I suspect, Jeff, that you were the only one here that doesn't know all this stuff by heart. So, but hopefully other people will watch this later, so it will have value to them later. So no problem, and I love questions. That makes it all feel better. I was a little worried I wouldn't get any, so thanks.
Well, in that case, the last thing I'll say is that the progress y'all have made on this in the last 3 or 4 months is insane. I mean, I'm just stunned by how much I can do now that I mean, like the field blocks I never twigged to 6 months ago. But just the amount of development work I'm seeing today is, I'm just so impressed with the work you've done.
Good. Yeah. Well, I think the field blocks is one of the hidden features of Backdrop that most people, beginners, aren't aware of at all, and it's really powerful. Okay. Well, if anybody has questions, I think we might have been just cut off. Yep.
We're still here. We just get past our survey now.
Okay. Well, ping me in Slack or or Zulip, or go to the forum is also a good place to ask questions. Not as fast. I'll be hanging around. There is a Slack channel for just this session in the CMS Philly Slack place, so I'll watch that for the next hour or two if anybody has questions there. But Jeff, you know where to find me.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much.
Yep. Bye.